This is TWiT.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. Provide more support for MSP teams by keeping their skills up to date in all aspects of IT, including MS Cloud, AWS, CompTIA, and so much more. TWiT listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan. The discount is based on the size of your team when you fill out their form.
All right, let's move on to the fun stuff.
That's
Jose?
right. We have an astronaut here.
An astronaut? The astronaut. What are you talking about?
We should really, Jose, just kind of point out to everyone that you are near and dear to my heart in terms of the astronauts that I've written about or met in person, because we are from the same hometown.
Oh,
from
thank
Stockton.
God you didn't mention band again. I thought we were going to hear about band.
No, Stockton, California.
Stockton's cool.
Franklin High School. We both were alumni from there. I heard you were there just before we started recording. You said you were there
yesterday
earlier. So well, I'm so excited to welcome you. And I should probably say my mother says hello as well.
Yes, please say hello to her. I met her at a restaurant, and she came up to me and she says, "You know, I'm Tariq's mother." Oh, I know him. He writes a lot about space. I didn't realize you were from Stockton, Tariq. Yeah. You know, we had talked a few times, and I didn't realize you were from Stockton. It wasn't until your mother told, and then of course we started talking more, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why this is such a special treat to be able to for you to have some time to join us on the show. So welcome, and I guess just to start out with, for the folks who don't know, if you can just give us like a short bio or like an introduction of who you are and where you are right now.
Sure. Well, I come from a migrant farm working family. My parents are from Mexico, but I was born here because I was born during the summer months, harvest months. And as I grew up, we went up and down to California 9 months following the harvest, starting in Southern California, 2 months in Central California, 5 months in Stockton. And then we would go to my parents' hometown in Michoacan, Mexico, for 3 months and self-study. And it wasn't until my second grade teacher, Miss Young, convinced my parents that we needed to stay in one place. We made Stockton our home. And then as a fifth grader, I was 10 years old, I saw the very last Apollo mission on TV, Apollo 17. And it was none other than Gene Cernan walking on the surface of the moon. And I would go outside. It was a cold December early evening, come back inside and see him and listen to the reporter. Still remember his name, Walter Cronkite, narrating that walk. And I was hooked. I said, this is what I want to be. As a 10-year-old, I already knew I wanted to be an astronaut. And my dad gave me a simple recipe that day when I told him. He did two important things. First, he validated the dream. He didn't squish it. He actually nourished it and said, I think that's a great idea. And I remind you, this comes from a man who only has a third grade education, but he had the wisdom to sit me down and said, follow these 5 simple steps, son. Determine your purpose in life, recognize how far you are, draw yourself a roadmap, and then prepare yourself according to the challenge, and never, ever give up. Develop a work ethic second to none. And of course, the sixth one is that never give up, the perseverance that I add to my recipe. And I put that to work. And after 11 rejections, that 12th time was the charm. That's when I finally got selected into the 19th class of astronauts, flew on Space Shuttle Discovery, and then they retired the Space Shuttle fleet. So I came back home to raise my family. And now, can't come full circle. They say you could take a kid out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the kid, because now I have a vineyard, still pick grapes. They're my grapes. And I didn't stop there. I make my own wine under the label Tierra Luna Cellars. And it's a wine that tastes out of this world.
So I love this story, and a part of it that I love, and you were probably about the same age when you saw Apollo 17 as I was when I saw Apollo 11. And of course, I had the same reaction. And when Tariq finally came around 20 years later and watched the space shuttle flights, he had the same reaction. The big difference is, of course, you went out and became an astronaut against all odds. And I just want to remind people that this story is told capably and beautifully in the movie A Million Miles Away, which is now streaming on Amazon Prime. I watched it last night. Yes, I got dirt in my eye and got a little misty-eyed. But I thought one of the things that was remarkable, besides just being a well-made, top-shelf movie, one of the things I found really remarkable is, and because you just mentioned this, you know, they chronicle your origins. And that origin story could have easily become overly sentimental, or it could have been tinged with frustration and anger. It could have been a lot of things. But what it felt like to me was it was played very sincerely, very straight up. We really got a sense of where you came from and what your family went through. And, you know, for most people watching this, they've never had an experience like that. I mean, I had a lot of crummy manual labor jobs when I was a kid, but nothing like that. And when I drive up and down Central California and I see people working in the fields, you're really reminded of how tough that work is. I mean, that is not an easy way to grow up or to live as an adult, because you're bending over for hours and hours and hours. And that is not an easy part of the country to work in. It's hot, it's dusty, it's pretty brutal work. So I thought all those things taken into consideration, I thought the portrayal of that in your family life was really handled with great delicacy and love.
Yeah. And you know, and it was tough, Rod, but you know, when you grow up under those conditions, that's the only thing you know. You don't know any better. You think, okay, this is the way everybody is. It's not until after you grow up and you reflect back and you wonder, how in the heck did I make it out of there?
Yeah.
And then that's when you realize how important family structure is, how important education is, how important goal setting is for yourselves, and all those type of things that you need to sort of climb out of the hole you find yourself in.
You know, education is like a through line, it seems, of your life. You mentioned earlier, and it's shown in the in both your biography, Reaching for the Stars, and the film itself, about, you know, your teacher convincing your parents to stay. You went to the University of Pacific, which is in Stockton again. Yay!
Yes, and I had him wear the T-shirt so we could.
You did? I saw that.
And you studied electrical engineering there, and I was curious. I mean, it seems like that early life in Stockton and with your family really shaped like all the tenets that you followed that led you to become an astronaut there. But what drew you to electrical engineering in terms, like specifically, to make that kind of like the first foray into academic life, into your career at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and then beyond to NASA?
Well, that's a good question, Tariq. I'm kind of like a pragmatic person. I knew I wanted to be an astronaut, but I also knew there wasn't a major in college for astronaut. Mm-hmm. And now there's other majors like astronomy, astrophysicist, and those type of things. But again, I'm pragmatic. I said, okay, if things don't work out in me not being an astronaut, what am I going to work in? Mm-hmm. I got to have a job. And of course, Silicon Valley is not far away from us, Tariq, right? And so I said, what do Silicon Valley hire the most? It's engineers. And quite frankly, the reason why I became an electrical engineer is because my oldest brother is an electrical engineer. Okay, I'll out of all the engineering, I'll just pick electrical because my brother is finishing up his degree in that. So what's good enough for him is good enough for me, and the job. And so that's why I picked engineering, because I figure if everything falls by the wayside, I'm going to have a job as an engineer somewhere in Silicon Valley.